as we say, terima kasih, 谢谢各位来宾，大家好。Secretary CPC Professor Yang Tianjin, Secretary Vice Mayor, President of Tianjin University, Sir Chai Li Yuan, and we welcome you to come and visit Malaysia in October. And I've mentioned to Minister Anthony Loke that we'll also arrange a major lecture for him so that to reciprocate. He have burdened me with this lecture. We will burden him a lecture, important lecture in Malaysia. And distinguished faculty and students. Of course, it is a rare privilege to be here at Tianjin University with the profound record, impeccable in terms of research, and a great, not only a great university, but an old university from its origin as Peiyang University in 1895. That was the year that my grandfather was born. Now, it has become a very distinguished institution. And through its mission with struggle and achievements alike. Now, the motto you uphold, seeking truth from facts, relevant 130 years ago and more relevant and imminent now. A lesson not only for the halls of academia, but also for the affairs of nations. How I wish political leaders in the world understand the need to seek truth from facts. This morning I wish to reflect on three things. First, a trust that Malaysia and China have built across half a century, and how that trust has been renewed in recent years. Therefore, I must express my profound gratitude again to President Xi Jinping for enhancing these bilateral relations, for showing what leadership entails, hence his vision, including the sense of his now the recent promotion of a global governance. And second, the turbulence of the world and global economy, and what Asia might contribute to a steadier order. And third, the lessons of history that remind us never to believe that conflict is inevitable, and never to let nations feel they have no choice but to walk a tragic path. Now, the relationship between Malaysia and China rests on firm foundations. Malaysia was the first non-socialist country in Southeast Asia to recognize the People's Republic of China in 1974. It was a bold gesture of confidence in the future. Half a century on, that confidence has matured into a habit of trust, steady, sometimes quiet, but always real. The three meetings I have had thus far in the last 2 years with President Xi Jinping, most recently during his highly successful state visit to Kuala Lumpur this April, were continuations of a long journey. Each encounter carried forward the understanding that our two countries, different in size, yet equal in respect, can speak with candor and act with consistency. This I mentioned personally to President Xi Jinping. He's president of China. It's a huge country, immense power, and economic, military. And yet, when he speaks to me as Prime Minister of Malaysia, he speaks with respect as equal. I salute him and you, the people of China. What gives this relationship its weight is the assurance that even in uncertain times, both countries keep faith with one another. And it is precisely in moments of turbulence that such steadiness matters most. Now, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are regrettably at a moment when the world economy feels unsettled. Trade rules that once promised predictability are now capriciously altered or ignored. Trade distortions, subsidies continues unchecked. Export controls are introduced one day and revised the next day. Where integration was once assumed, fragmentation is now the prevailing mood. Now, as the classic romance of the three kingdoms, I got the Chinese terminology right, learning from my protocol chief, the police officer. But in front of you, I dare not repeat that. Romance of Three Kingdoms. The empire, long divided, must unite. Long united, must divide. Thus it has ever been. Somebody must repeat that in Chinese. We find ourselves living through another age of fracture. Yet history teaches us such moments are not without pattern. You know, I quote from the classic romance of the Three Kingdoms. Well, it is a romance, not romance that the young are thinking about. I mean, about the historical account. But it gives such a compelling narrative about history of nations and relations between nations, and about empire. They can be divided, but due and mainly through good governance, proper leadership can unite. But a united nation can break due to capricious, corrupt, and poor governance. The global economy has been reordered 3 times since the mid-20th century. The first, Bretton Woods in 1944, as you students are aware. The second in 71, where the United States abruptly ended the link. And now the third, reordering, unfolding before our own eyes. One marked by tariffs proclaimed by Liberation Day. Now, each of these reorderings was scripted by them far from our shores. Asia was present, onlooker, at times a victim, but never the author. Today, we have the responsibility to ensure that the next chapter is written with Asian ink as well. That's what globalization is all about. That is about what global trade is all about. We decide together. We don't receive dictation and orders and instructions. We have become independent, economically vibrant, and we must and should have a say. Why does this matter? Because fragmentations carries real costs. Now, the IMF estimates that severe fragmentation of trade combined with technological decoupling could cost some countries up to 12% of their national output. Yes, statistics can delude us, but it does matter. It affects our livelihood. It affects the disbursement for education and health and the welfare of our people. So, globalization can lead to great discontents. But here is the danger, because globalization had flaws. Some now leap to conclusion that only exclusionary clubs or economic fortresses can provide security. That is not what we in Asia, what China and many of these countries consider as proper and right. Our position is justice, rule-based order, that the powerful must not neglect the poor and the marginalized. So, this is the art of standing tall without standing apart. It is the conviction that nations can remain fully themselves, sovereign in choice, in voice, and in destiny, while still being open to the flows of trade and investment, of talent and technology, on which prosperity depends. Now, this is not alien to us. We don't need someone from the capitals of the West to preach to us about globalization. You are familiar, as we in Malaysia are very familiar, about the voyages of Admiral Zheng He centuries ago, linking China and Malacca, Africa, and Arabia. Zheng He, in every journey, brought gifts, but never conquest. Exchanges, but never to subjugate. Now, along maritime Silk Road, languages, ideas, and faith traveled along with goods. Civilization enriched one another without losing their distinct identities. And in the great tradition of Confucian tradition, we find a phrase that captures that wisdom. He bu tong, right? He bu tong. Correct, okay? Harmony, amazing, very universal. Harmony without uniformity. We have excellent bilateral relations with China. Great harmony. But you're not a uniform system. You choose your order, your system. We choose ours. But it's harmony, trust, and collaboration. So sovereign independence or interdependence, in essence, harmony without uniformity, translated into the language of international relations. Now, this is also an intellectual lineage in political economy, what you call as complex interdependence. But we must go further to design interdependence that fortifies sovereignty rather than undermines it. It should not make nations fearful that their autonomy will be diluted. It should give them that confidence. By being connected, their resilience is multiplied. Now we have in Asia that responsibility in this endeavor. Because in the past, what is globalization and international trade is always designed, crafted, framed in transatlantic terms. But today, China and Asia is the engine of growth, global growth, home to the majority of the young, like you, and the center of most dynamic technologies, like here in Tianjin University. And China, this is just what people used to say, military power, economic power. By one additional component which is very relevant to our discourse with the President Xi Jinping. That is also a civilizational power that talks about enriching one another, that talk about alliance and collaboration between cultures and civilizations. We in Malaysia, relatively a much smaller country, but will make our own contribution. We'll have a say. And we know for a fact that here in China, our voice will be heard and will be respected. So we must resist the temptation to think that the world has no alternative but to splinter into blocks. Fragmentation is not destiny. We can choose cooperation or coercion, bridges or barriers. And we have chosen what is sane, rational, for the benefit of our people. Now tomorrow, and we say as a Muslim, inshallah, God willing, I will stand with fellow leaders to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War. Such moments are solemn. They honor the millions of our forefathers and parents who endured hardship and loss. And they remind us that peace, once broken, is not easily restored. There are times when nations convince themselves that conflict is unavoidable. When leaders believe that they have no choice, when they feel that they are backed into a corner, peace then slips away and war breaks out. Our task in Asia today to ensure that no country feels driven into such a corner. That requires constant reassurances. Reassurance that sovereignty will be respected, that dialogue will not be foreclosed, and the dignity of each nation will be preserved. Peace is not a matter of treaties or deterrence. Indeed, it rests equally on the patient work of making every state feel it still has a choice or choices, that it still has a space to breathe. That's why under our chairmanship in ASEAN this year, the theme is inclusivity and sustainability. That has become our guiding themes. That means no nation should be left outside the conversation. And that green policies, something that will be able to sustain the habits of cooperation and trust. Now, China, of course, have that responsibility because we look to China, to Beijing, not only for economic dynamism, but also to complement our expectation and aspirations that Asia's future will be open, stable, and respectful of diversity. So tomorrow's parade in Beijing will carry many, many meanings. But beyond the spectacle and the grandeur, it should prompt us to ask whether we are doing enough to prevent the return of inevitability. The true measure of strength lies in how nations choose to step back from paths that would entrap them. China, together with Asia, has a responsibility, our shared responsibility. And I commend the leadership of many countries in Asia, including China, to ensure that we never again convince ourselves that we have no choice. except to promote peace, development, and progress. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I began with the trust Malaysia and China have nurtured for half a century. I spoke about the turbulence of the global economy, of the lessons of history that reminds us how fragile peace can be. Now, these reflections point to a simple truth, that Asia's future will rest on steadiness, the confidence to act without haste, and the patience to give every nation the space it needs to feel secure. This is how sovereignty is preserved, how resilience is multiplied. If we hold fast to that spirit and carry our young voices and aspirations with it, then Asia can move forward with dignity, assured of its place in the world. 谢谢各位。